Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mark Andrews. I'm technical editor of Silicon Semiconductor magazine within Angel Business Communications. And today we're looking at Semicon West, new innovations from leaders across our industry. And joining me today is Ms. Kate Wilson, who is Vice President of Marketing for Semiconductor at Edwards Vacuum. And Kate's going to share with us some insights that her company has gained during a period where I believe we've all been challenged in many regards, either on our family basis or mixing our family with our lives. And even though our industry seems to be thriving at a time when others are struggling, it's not been without the very hard work and dedication of companies like Edwards Vacuum that has made this possible for us. So Kate, if we could just begin, if you could share with us a few of the insights that Edwards has gained as it's been working with customers during this time, and share with us some of the unique programmatic offerings that you provide your customers that have helped out. And then we can discuss some key things that we've learned and things that people can put into practice going forward, if that sounds good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. And thank you very much for inviting me here today to talk to you. So, as a sub-fab supplier into the semiconductor industry, there's a number of things we really need to do to make sure our customers are successful. So the first, I would say, is to make sure that we keep their operations running as well as possible. And obviously with the global footprint of the semiconductor industry, that has been challenging through the current COVID-19 crisis. The second is really to make sure that as they're developing their new facilities, that we can support them through that in terms of deliveries, installation, making sure those fabs come up and run very quickly so they can start manufacturing and making money as quickly as possible. And then the third is to make sure that we keep up with the technologies. I mean, obviously you all know the technologies change very rapidly in this industry. And, we need to make sure that for the next generation technologies for all our customers, we keep up with that. And that's something that you can't let slip, even for the 6 months that we've been going through this crisis, because the technology changes so quickly. So there's a number of things that we've been working on to make sure that we're prepared to support our customers. And I think, one of the key areas is to make sure that, we can support all of our customers locally. And so we have really very strong regional teams, which has helped a lot through this crisis. But with that, to make sure that we have those standard global processes and procedures, and the operating practices, so that we can have operational excellence locally, that are provided locally, the expertise locally, but it's standardized for our global customer base. And I think, we've been working on that for quite some time now, but that, we've really seen that come into its own, that we can, even in the epicenter in Wuhan in China, to keep the level of support that we needed for our customer installations through this crisis. So I think, there's a number of areas sort of throughout all of our organization where we've seen having those really strong local capabilities has made us much more resilient in this crisis. And then obviously we've had to adapt the way we would operate globally to make sure that we can support them, more remotely. And I think a lot of the digital technologies that we've been using have helped support that side of the business.
Yeah, and that's something that I found very interesting as I've worked with Edwards Vacuum over the years and watched as the technology has changed in the introduction of what's typically referred to as smart manufacturing, or in some cases, Industry 4.0 type processes and procedures that allow for a greater collection of data than we have had in the past. But of course, I know that in order to make something like this really work, that you have to analyze that data and then meld that together with the experience that you have. And of course, obviously, Edwards supports semiconductor manufacturers globally, hundreds of locations around the world. And so do you feel that there's things that you've learned going through these past 4 or 5 or 6 months that sort of either confirmed what you had expected the system could do, so to speak, going in, or have you achieved that and yet also said, oh, well, here's some other areas that we need to look at in the future as well?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I said, I think the strong local presence helps, because we do have to still do quite a lot of things locally, because one of our biggest frustrations. So we have a lot of data, we can do a lot with that data, but getting it out of fabs is actually quite challenging. So I think, we've had better access through this crisis, particularly, for troubleshooting, for maybe installation of new equipment where we haven't been able to move people globally to help support that. We have done that remotely. So we've had some access in some areas that we've struggled with previously. But I think, having that data access into fabs is quite critical to really go the next level to be able to get that standardized data processing globally. So still we have to kind of have quite a local content in that, which is fine with the local expertise, but it does limit a bit the capabilities to really access and use that data. But obviously, one of the key areas that we work on with the digital transformation is to minimize the impact to the fab and minimize really the number of people who need to be in the fab. And there's a number of ways that we do that. So one is by, understanding what is happening to our equipment and being able to be prepared to do something about it proactively. So instead of reacting all the time, we can be prepared, we can do the diagnostics to understand, what parts need to be changed, but also, increasing, like taking that data and improving the reliability constantly, again, means that we minimize, the amount of work we actually have to do in a facility. And, that's a key problem statement for people, both from a safety perspective of obviously everything you do that's sort of slightly uncontrolled in a fab. Some of the operations, they always are invasive into the equipment. But then also, just in terms of getting a workforce, most of our customers really do struggle to get skilled workforce to operate their fabs if there's a, very labor intensive work. So I think there's a lot of, uses for that data that allows us to be more prepared to work on things more quickly, and effectively, but also, to work towards having a reduction in the overall activities that need to be done in the sub-fab, which is quite critical.
Yes, and one thing that I've gotten a lot out of is I've met with members of the Edwards organization and discussed some of the programs that they're doing with preventative maintenance. I mean, I think preventative maintenance is almost kind of like too small of a title to call it, because it's so much more than that. It's that interrelationship between the data that gets collected, the preventative maintenance that can be done already. And then what I found particularly interesting was the anticipatory nature that some of this analysis gives you. I know some of the case studies that I've looked at where you say, well, this particular process tool, this vacuum system seems to be causing more issues than any others around it. So we need to look at it, and because of the data that you generate and the experience level that you bring into it, it's able to say, yep, this thing's a problem, but it's not really the pump. It's the holistic approach of how everything fits together, and that's got to be terribly complicated to work through.
Yeah, and one thing we've also been working on for a while is integration of all the components in the sub-fab, and I think that brings into control a lot of those variables. So obviously, if every tool has a slightly different installation design and slightly different components, you just get a huge amount more variability, which with the tolerances and the processes that people need to try and execute on these days, any variability causes problems, and we try and minimize that as much as possible. So we have seen a big increase in the uptake on the integrated systems to really get control over that operation within the sub-fab, our ability to understand what is causing any problems that happen and what the variabilities are, because we're controlling all aspects of that equipment. And the other benefit obviously is one of the biggest challenges we've got these days is to actually fit all the equipment underneath the tools as the chamber densities increase on the tools. And we have a lot of work with the OEMs to make sure that we can configure the sub-fab equipment to actually fit underneath the tool, and also then install it in as quickly as possible to minimize the amount of time it takes to get the fab up and running. Oh. So there's a number of things that come together there to make sure that we've got the best control piece of equipment that can be easily maintained. The troubleshooting's easy, and you've got one owner for the whole thing. So if something goes wrong, you're not kind of searching around for which bit of it went wrong. It's easy for us to interrogate that and see through all the system, from the parameters that we can monitor where the problem is and fix it quickly.
fascinating to see how that all fits together and how it works together. Have I know the pandemic that we're still dealing with around the world right now has led to a lot of challenges. Have the supply chain constraints been an issue that you've been dealing with the most, or is it just really the people factor of getting folks in, either the customers' people or your people? How's that been going?
Yeah, I mean, and clearly we do have sort of business continuity focus, so it's always something we look at. But, you know, I don't think we'd had global pandemic on our list of things we needed to plan for. So, you know, it absolutely has tested, you know, how we operate and how we operate our facilities. And I would say we've had challenges through all of them, but, you know, our supply chain, it's taken a lot of management, but we essentially haven't really had shipment issues, and we've actually seen more issues because of OEM tool shipment issues, so that we've had our shipments delayed because there wasn't a tool to put it on rather than the other way around. You know, the operating within our facilities, clearly safety is one of our key, you know, metrics. It's the first thing that we worry about. So maintaining a safe workforce in all of our facilities has been a challenge. You know, and going to split shift systems, and, you know, the distancing and how we can still have safe working with those conditions has been something we've worked through. And, you know, there's been a lot of effort gone into that. But again, you know, there's been minor disruptions to our ability to supply stuff, but not too much. So, I mean, I've been extremely impressed at how prepared we were, and even the things that we weren't actually quite prepared for, that we've adapted very quickly to that. And I think, you know, one of the areas that, you know, clearly it's been difficult for everybody, you know, just how to operate, how you behave with people, and how you can actually communicate and interact with people. But one of the things I've found really quite encouraging is, you know, I did worry about losing customer contact, but we've actually really, in some ways, increased it in our organisation to be able to have contact through a broader set of our employees, because we're doing it all by video conference. You know, it's much easier to get a bigger group together than when you actually go and fly around the world visiting customers. So, you know, I think there's been a lot of challenges through, you know, managing our own organisation and how we, you know, get people to actually get into the office and do what they need to do. But, you know, in terms of staying connected and staying connected with customers particularly, which is obviously very key for us, you know, that it's challenging, but we have found, you know, some really good ways around that. And I think we'll take some of those forward into how we operate in the future as well.
No. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Kate, I think it's gratifying that your customers have been able to benefit from your vast expertise and the way that you've been able to keep them up and running. I know not everyone is your customer, obviously. If there's anyone, particularly if they've had problems, and this in the period that they're in right now has shown them what kind of problems they have, is it still possible then for them to connect with Edwards Vacuum and have them, Edwards Semiconductor, and have them have you help them with the situations that they may be experiencing right now for the first time?
Yes, yeah, no, and it is a very interesting period to kind of see, you know, there's challenges all around. So certainly we've seen some new problems we hadn't seen before, and obviously would be very interesting to talk to any of our customers about some of their challenges as well.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you, Kate, for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your thoughtful answers, and I look forward to the opportunities to speak with you and other members of Edwards Vacuum very soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much.